When did you learn to finally stand up for yourself? I finally stood up to my Aunt Carol, the woman who'd spent my entire life making me feel small, right there in front of everyone at the Harrison family reunion picnic. She just mocked my lifelong dream of opening a bookstore, sneering that I was too weak for something like that I'd fold under pressure. Something inside me finally snapped after years of biting my tongue. "I'm done with your crap, Carol," I spat out, my voice shaking but clear. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. That was 10 months ago. Today, I heard through the grapevine that Carol's crying alone in her ridiculously oversized mansion, shunned by the very family she used to rule with an iron fist and a fat wallet. Apparently, being queen isn't much fun when your subjects finally revolt. Growing up, our family felt like this intense, interwoven unit. Mandatory Sunday dinners, endless obligations, a web of expectations spun mostly by my mother's older sister, Aunt Carol. I was the quiet kid, Ellie, the one who learned early that nodding, smiling, and generally making myself invisible was the path of least resistance. Pleasing people, especially Mom and Carol, felt like my main purpose in life. Carol thrived on that dynamic. Rich, sharp-tongued, and utterly convinced of her own superiority, she held court at every gathering, her pronouncements treated like gospel, mostly because she held the keys to the kingdom, the Harrison family trust. Grandpa set it up to support us all, but after he died, Carol somehow became the sole trustee. She controlled everything, doling out funds for college, house deposits, even emergencies, like she was royalty bestowing favors. It kept everyone, especially my mom, perpetually anxious, afraid to cross her. One wrong move, and the financial support could vanish. The first time her specific brand of cruelty sliced right through me, I was 12. It was Grandpa's funeral, and I loved him dearly. I was crying quietly by the graveside, trying to be discreet, when Carol's sharp voice cut through the solemn air. "Stop sniveling, Ellie," she hissed, loud enough for nearby relatives to hear. "You're spineless. Harrisons are supposed to be stronger than this." Spineless. That word lodged itself in my chest, a constant, painful reminder of how she saw me. It never really went away. By 16, desperate for summer work and maybe, foolishly, hoping to prove I wasn't entirely useless, I started helping at her antique shop, Treasures in Time. It was less a job and more a daily exercise in absorbing criticism. Every tag I wrote was crooked. Every shelf I dusted missed a spot. Every customer I helped was apparently handled incorrectly. "No, Ellie, not like that. Pay attention," became the background noise to my life. Despite, or maybe because of, the constant negativity, a dream started taking shape in my mind. A bookstore. Not a stuffy, intimidating place like Carol's shop, but a cozy refuge filled with stories, comfortable chairs, and the smell of paper and coffee. A place where people felt welcomed, not judged. One sweltering afternoon while polishing some ridiculously ornate silverware, I dared to mention it. Carol actually laughed, a short barking sound, totally devoid of warmth. "A bookstore? Ellie, be serious. You'd run it into the ground within 6 months. You simply don't have the head for business, dear," Mom overheard from the back room. "Oh, Carol, let her have her little dreams," she murmured, but her voice was thin, wavering. She avoided Carol's icy stare, fiddling nervously with the strap of her purse. The fear radiating off her was almost tangible. Defending me wasn't worth risking Carol's wrath, the potential cutoff from the trust fund. Mom chose self-preservation. I understood, but it still felt like a betrayal. My younger brother Nate was 14 then. He saw everything. He was quiet like me, but missed nothing. After Carol delivered a particularly cutting remark, he'd catch my eye and give a subtle eye roll, a silent acknowledgement that, yeah, she was awful. But he stayed out of the line of fire. He'd learned, like Mom, that silence was safer. At 18, against Carol's predictions of my utter failure, I got accepted into college. English literature. My dream felt a tiny bit closer. I imagined immersing myself in stories, learning the business side, maybe minoring in business. Then came the reality check. Carol, as trustee, flat out refused to release any funds for my tuition. "Literature?" she scoffed during a tense family dinner. "What a complete waste of the family's money on you. You'll never amount to anything with that." So, I scrambled. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, waitressing late nights, tutoring bored high school kids on weekends. Every penny went towards tuition and rent for a tiny room near campus. I was perpetually exhausted, living off instant ramen, barely scraping by, but I was doing it without her. Nate, bless his heart, was my secret benefactor. He'd save up his allowance, money Carol probably gave him, and slip me crumpled 20s when he thought she wasn't looking. "For textbooks, Ellie," he'd whisper. "Don't tell Mom," or his quiet solidarity meant the world to me. My best friend, Mia, a fiercely talented graphic designer I'd known since kindergarten, was my rock. She listened to my rants about Carol, celebrated my small victories, and constantly encouraged me. "Don't let her kill your bookstore dream, Ellie," she'd say fiercely. "Use that anger, fuel the fire." When I was 20, feeling a bit more confident after surviving 2 years of college on my own steam, I decided to try again. I put together a rough business plan for my bookstore concept, market research, potential locations, startup costs. I pitched it nervously at a Sunday family dinner, hoping maybe, just maybe, Carol would see I was serious. Bad idea. She didn't even let me finish. "Oh, Ellie, still clinging to that childish fantasy?" she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Focus on getting a real job, something practical." My stomach plummeted. Worse than Carol's dismissal was my mother's reaction. Mom just nodded slowly, avoiding my eyes. Maybe Carol has a point, honey," she murmured. "It's a tough market out there." That hurt more than Carol's predictable cruelty. It felt like my own mother believed I wasn't capable. Later that night, Nate knocked on my bedroom door. He slipped inside, his expression grim. "Don't listen to them, Ellie," he whispered fiercely. "Carol's just jealous. You've actually got guts, and she hates that." His words struck a chord, igniting a tiny spark of defiance I hadn't realized was there. That night, I started a journal, not for feelings, but for facts. Every insult Carol threw my way, every dismissive comment, every instance I witnessed of her manipulating manipulating family members with the trust fund. It all went down in black and white. Documenting it felt like taking back some small measure of control. Mia saw the journal and made a suggestion that terrified me. You need proof, Ellie. Real proof. Record her next time she goes off on one of her tangents. Words can be twisted. Recordings are harder to deny. The thought of secretly recording my own aunt made me feel sick. Rocking the boat, potentially igniting Carol's full fury, I wasn't sure I could handle it. Christmas rolled around, bringing with it Carol's annual elaborate holiday party at her mansion. Amidst the forced cheer and expensive champagne, she made an announcement. She was selling the antique shop, retiring. My breath caught. Maybe this was my chance? But no, she beamed, turning pointedly towards my cousin Derek, known primarily for his laziness and inflated ego. Derek, dear boy, I was thinking you might be interested in taking over the shop? Keep it in the family. She glanced at me, a flicker of malice in her eyes. Ellie, bless her heart, just isn't cut out for the pressures of business. Derek smirked, already picturing himself as the boss. I felt that familiar cloak of invisibility settle over me again. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, forcing a polite smile. Later that evening, Nate found me hiding in the library. His face was pale. Ellie, I just overheard Carol talking to Mom in the kitchen, he said urgently. She was saying you're unstable, that you shouldn't be trusted with any significant amount from the trust fund when you turn 25. My heart started pounding like a drum against my ribs. Unstable? Because I had a dream she didn't approve of? Because I wasn't bowing and scraping anymore? The injustice of it burned. I found Carol holding court by the fireplace, regaling some distant cousins with tales of her latest European cruise. I waited until she was momentarily alone and took a deep breath. Aunt Carol, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, can I ask you something privately? We stepped into the formal dining room, the long mahogany table reflecting the chandelier lights like cold fire. Why do you do this? I asked, keeping my voice low. Why do you seem to hate me so much? She actually laughed, that same humorless bark. Hate you? Don't be so dramatic, Ellie. I just see things clearly. You're too soft, too sensitive. You wouldn't know how to handle the family legacy, the responsibilities. Someone has to protect it. She dismissed my pain, my entire being, with a wave of her hand, as if I were a fly buzzing annoyingly around her head. I fled upstairs to a guest bathroom and cried, really cried, for the first time in years over her. Not just hurt, but angry. Angry at her, but mostly angry at myself for letting her walk all over me for so long. The next time I saw Mia, I told her everything. She listened patiently, her expression growing harder with every detail. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, sleek digital voice recorder. Okay, Ellie, she said, pressing it into my hand. No more playing nice. Get proof. Get undeniable proof, or she will own you for the rest of your life. My hand trembled as I took it. It felt heavy, dangerous. At the next family gathering, a dull Easter brunch, I tucked the recorder into my purse, leaving it slightly open and angled towards where Carol usually held court. My heart hammered against my ribs the entire time. Sure enough, she started talking about me when she thought I was out of earshot, complaining to another aunt about my silly little bookshop idea and how I clearly needed firm guidance. Later, alone in my car, I listened back, my stomach churning. The audio was crystal clear. Carol's voice, dripping with condescension. Such a dreamer, that Ellie. Completely unrealistic. She'll fail, of course, and come begging for my help within a year. Mark my words. Failure. Begging for her help. I saved the file, feeling sick but also grimly satisfied. Proof. A few weeks later, something happened that pushed me closer to the edge. I came home from a brutal double shift to find a box on my doorstep. It contained random junk. Old magazines, cracked pottery, things clearly destined for donation. Confused, I went inside, only to realize my small, carefully curated collection of college textbooks, expensive volumes I'd painstakingly acquired, was gone from my shelf. Panic seized me. I called Carol, my voice tight. Aunt Carol, did you take some books from my apartment? There was a pause, then her voice dripping with false sweetness. Oh, Ellie, darling, I was helping your mother clear out some clutter from her garage, and there was a box there. Must have gotten them mixed up with the charity donations. Oh, dear, I'm so sorry. Such a silly mistake. A mistake? My specific, vital textbook somehow ended up in her car and accidentally donated. I didn't believe her for a second. I completely lost it. Years of suppressed anger erupted. You did this on purpose. I yelled into the phone. You hate that I'm managing without you. She immediately switched to wounded victim mode. Ellie, how can you say such things? I make one tiny mistake and you become hysterical. Honestly, your instability worries me. I slammed the phone down, shaking with rage. Minutes later, Mom called. Ellie, Carol just called me, terribly upset. What did you say to her? You need to apologize. You're overreacting, honey. It was just an accident. Overreacting, making me feel like I was the crazy one. The problem? That was their pattern. Minimize Carol's cruelty, magnify my reaction. But this time, Nate provided the missing piece. The next day, he quietly handed me his phone. Listen to this, he muttered. He'd been at Mom's when Carol stopped by, and he'd recorded her talking to Derek on speakerphone. Carol's voice, smug and triumphant. Taught her a lesson, didn't I? That little brat needed to be put in her place. Thinking she's so independent with her precious books. Put me in my place. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate sabotage. I saved Nate's recording alongside mine. When I played both recordings for Mia, her eyes flashed. Okay, Ellie, that's it. This isn't just about you anymore. She's actively trying to ruin your life. It's time to fight back. Really fight back. You need allies. Allies. The word echoed. Most of the family was too scared of Carol or too dependent on her money. But there was one person who'd escaped her orbit. Uncle Tom, Carol's younger brother. He'd left town years ago after a bitter falling out, something vaguely related to the trust fund, though no one ever discussed the details. He was the family pariah, the one Carol warned us about, which probably meant he was exactly who I needed to talk to. Finding his number took some digging, but I eventually tracked him down in a small town a few hours away. I called him, my voice trembling, introduced myself, and haltingly explained why I was calling. To my surprise, he agreed to meet. We met at a nondescript diner halfway between our towns. Uncle Tom was older now, lines etched around his kind eyes, but there was a resilience about him. He listened patiently as I poured out years of frustration, humiliation, and anger, culminating in the recordings. When I finished, he sighed heavily. "Ellie," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "That sounds exactly like Carol. She hasn't changed a bit." He then told me his story, how Carol had systematically bullied and manipulated him, twisting facts and turning family members against him until he felt he had no choice but to walk away from the family and his rightful share of the trust. "She painted me as greedy and unstable," he said quietly, "just like she's doing to you." He reached across the table and patted my hand. "But you've got proof, kiddo. That's more than I ever had. I'll help you. I've still got old letters, documents from back then, proof of her manipulative ways. Maybe it's time the truth came out." Hope, fragile but real, flickered within me. I gave Tom copies of my recordings, and he promised to back me up when the time was right. The time came sooner than I expected. Carol, likely sensing the shift in the dynamics, perhaps hearing whispers of my meeting with Tom, decided to tighten her grip. She called a formal family meeting, minus Tom of course, and announced, with grim satisfaction, that she was initiating the process to rewrite the trust agreement. "Given recent events," she said, her eyes landing on me with cold precision, "and Ellie's clear disrespect and instability, I feel it's my duty as trustee to protect the family's assets. I'll be restructuring things to ensure the legacy is in more capable hands." She meant Derek. She was cutting me out completely. My chest tightened, air refusing to enter my lungs. This was it. Standing up to her meant risking everything, not just potential future funds, but potentially my relationship with my mom, with Nate, with the entire family structure I'd always known. Was I strong enough? Nate answered that question for me. A few days later, he slipped me a thumb drive. "Carol left her laptop open," he whispered. "It's the draft of the new trust. Look who gets everything." I opened the file later, my hands shaking. He was right. While I was being essentially disinherited, Derek's future share was significantly increased, with vague stipulations about him managing family interests, likely including whatever was left of Carol's businesses. It was blatant favoritism fueled by spite. That night, fueled by coffee, anger, and Mia's unwavering support, I did something drastic. I created a simple blog, anonymously at first. I wrote out my story, detailing years of Carol's emotional abuse, her manipulation of the trust fund, the specific incidents like the funeral, the antique shop, the tuition refusal, the book sabotage. Then the kicker. I uploaded the audio files. Carol mocking my bookstore dream. Carol bragging about putting me in my place. Clear, undeniable evidence of her cruelty. I hit publish, my heart pounding. Mia helped spread the link discreetly among trusted friends and a few carefully chosen distant relatives. The response was immediate and explosive. The blog post spread like wildfire through the extended family network and even reached old family friends. People who had only ever seen Carol's perfectly curated public persona were stunned. Comments flooded in, shock, disbelief, and crucially, messages of support for me. Carol called me the next morning, her voice a furious screech. "You ungrateful little bitch. You've ruined me. Take that blog down now." I listened to her threats and accusations, then calmly said, "No, Carol, you did this to yourself," and hung up, my hand trembling but steady. Derek texted minutes later, a barrage of misspelled accusations. "Or faking those recruitings. Or just jealous and trying to steal my inheritance." I ignored him. Then came the call I dreaded. Mom. Her voice was tight with controlled panic. "Ellie, what have you done? You have to take that blog down immediately. You're tearing this family apart." "I'm tearing it apart?" I asked, the injustice stinging. "Or is Carol tearing it apart with her lies and control? She's cutting me out of the trust, Mom. She sabotaged my education. When does it stop?" "This isn't the way, Ellie," she pleaded. "Think about the family's reputation." "I am thinking about the family, Mom," I said quietly but firmly. "The family she's been poisoning for years. I'm not taking it down." There was a long silence. Then Mom whispered, "I can't talk about this right now," and hung up. My heart ached, but I knew I couldn't back down. Not now. The next day, Uncle Tom added fuel to the fire. He scanned and uploaded copies of the old letters he'd mentioned, correspondence between him, Carol, and their parents from years ago, clearly showing Carol's pattern of manipulation, lies about Tom's character, and her early obsession with controlling the family finances. His evidence corroborated my story perfectly. More family members started calling. Some were still angry, parroting Carol's lines about family loyalty and airing dirty laundry, but others sounded different. Apologetic. "Ellie, I had no idea," one ad stammered. "Carol always painted such a different picture." "I'm so sorry," I believed her. Small cracks were appearing in Carol's carefully constructed facade. Carol, predictably, retaliated with petty cruelty. Nate's 15th birthday was coming up. She organized a party at her house and pointedly forgot to invite me. It hurt, but Nate's loyalty shone through. He snuck out of his own party, meeting me at a nearby park. "Don't worry about it, Ellie," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Her party sucks anyway. I'm proud of you for fighting back." Seriously. His unwavering support was a lifeline. Knowing I needed professional help, Uncle Tom recommended a lawyer, Rachel Sharma, who specialized in trust litigation and family disputes. I met with Rachel, laying out the whole sordid story, armed with my blog link, the recordings, and Tom's letters. Rachel listened intently, her expression sharp and focused. "This is quite a situation," she said finally. "Based on this evidence, the recordings, the corroborating letters from your uncle, the clear pattern of behavior, and the draft trust favoring Derek, we have a strong case. We could potentially force a full audit of the trust, maybe even file a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty against your aunt." Lawsuit. Audit. The word sounded huge, terrifying. I hesitated, thinking of Mom, of Nate. "I don't want to drag Nate into a legal battle," I worried. Rachel nodded understandingly. "We can take steps to shield him as much as possible. But Ellie, your aunt is engaging in potential fraud and definite abuse of power. Holding her accountable is the only way to stop her and protect your own future." Carol wasn't going going down without a fight. She doubled down, shifting tactics. She started spreading rumors, whispers to distant relatives, calls to family friends, suggesting I was having a mental breakdown, that I was delusional, unstable, possibly even dangerous, anything to discredit the blog and my evidence. But her smear campaign backfired. Mia, furious at Carol's tactics, took action. She drafted an online petition addressed to Carol, demanding transparency regarding the trust and the immediate release of the educational funds I was rightfully owed, according to Grandpa's original intentions. She circulated it among family friends, community members, even former employees of Carol's shop. Within days, it had over 150 signatures. The local newspaper, sniffing a juicy story about a prominent local family imploding, picked it up. Suddenly, Carol's carefully guarded reputation was crumbling in public. That's when she showed up at my apartment. Unannounced, of course. I opened the door to find her standing there, her face pale with fury, her expensive handbag clutched like a weapon. "You need to stop this, Ellie," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Stop this nonsense now, or you will lose everything. Your family, your future, everything." I felt a surge of adrenaline, fear mixed with defiance. Remembering Mia's advice, I subtly activated the voice recorder app on my phone, tucked into my pocket. "Get out of my apartment, Carol," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're not welcome here. You ungrateful little parasite," she shrieked, losing control. "After everything I've done for this family, I will make you regret the day you decided to cross me." She lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her nails digging in. Instinctively, I yanked my arm away. "Don't touch me," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "Touch me again, Carol, and I swear I'm calling the police." Her eyes widened, perhaps realizing she'd gone too far. She glared at me, pure hatred radiating from her, then turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, trembling, heart racing, but strangely empowered. For the first time, I hadn't just endured her attack. I had pushed back, set a hard line, and she had retreated. I immediately saved the recording and emailed it to Rachel. She threatened me and grabbed me. I wrote, "What now?" Rachel's response was swift. "We file for a restraining order, now." The court hearing was nerve-wracking, but Rachel was brilliant. She presented the blog evidence, Tom's letters, and the chilling new recording of Carol's threats and admission of intent to make me regret crossing her. Carol's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive and unstable, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge granted a temporary restraining order, barring Carol from contacting me or Nate or coming within 100 yards of my apartment or workplace. It felt like a shield had finally clicked into place. That evening, Mom called again. This time she was crying, genuine heartbroken sobs. "Ellie, oh Ellie, I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I see it now. I see how I let her control everything, how I let her hurt you. I was so scared of losing the security, scared of her anger. Can we talk?" We met at a quiet cafe the next day. Mom looked exhausted, older. She apologized profusely, admitting her fear and her complicity through silence. It was the conversation I'd needed for years. I forgave her, but I also laid down clear boundaries. "I love you, Mom," I said gently but firmly, "but I can't have Carol's influence filtering through you anymore. Our relationship has to be separate from her." Mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand," she whispered. "No more, I promise." Around the same time, Nate decided he couldn't live under the same roof as Carol anymore, especially with the tension and her barely veiled hostility. He packed a bag and moved into my tiny spare room. It was cramped, but it felt right, safe. With the restraining order in place, Rachel pushed forward legally. She formally requested a full audit of the Harrison family trust. Carol's lawyers initially tried to stonewall, but facing mounting evidence and public pressure, they eventually had to comply. The auditors dug deep, and what they found was damning. Carol had been quietly misusing trust funds for years, funneling money into Derek's failing business ventures, paying for his lavish lifestyle, all while claiming funds were tight when I'd asked for tuition. It was textbook breach of fiduciary duty. Armed with the audit results, Uncle Tom called an emergency family meeting, pointedly excluding Carol. He laid out the findings calmly and clearly. Derek tried to bluster, defending his Auntie Carol, but Tom just coolly played the recording of Carol bragging about sabotaging my textbooks. Derek's face went white, and he sank back into his chair, silenced. The mood in the room shifted definitively. The evidence was irrefutable. Mom, finding her voice at last, stood up. "I nominate Tom to replace Carol as trustee," she announced clearly. One by one, aunts, uncles, and cousins voiced their agreement. Carol was officially voted out, set, her reign of financial terror finally over. She was cut off from the trust, her primary weapon of control gone. Suddenly, my future opened up. With Uncle Tom now managing the trust fairly and transparently, the funds I needed for my dream were accessible. It felt surreal. Within months, I found the perfect space. A cozy storefront on a tree-lined street. I poured my heart, soul, and trust fund disbursement into renovating it, creating the bookstore I'd always envisioned. I named it Pages of Courage. Nate was my right-hand man through it all, helping me paint walls, build shelves, haul boxes of books. He seemed lighter, happier, finally free from Carol's oppressive shadow. "We did it, Ellie," he grinned, wiping paint from his cheek. "We're actually building something good, something ours." Mia worked her magic, designing a beautiful logo, an open book with a stylized lion subtly incorporated into the spine, symbolizing the strength I'd finally found. The grand opening was more than I could have dreamed. The shop was packed with supportive family members, the ones who'd come around, friends, neighbors, even people who'd just read about the story in the paper. Mom was there, her eyes filled with tears, quietly helping arrange pastries on a platter. It felt like a beginning, not just for the store, but for us too. Carol, predictably, couldn't resist a parting shot. She posted a bitter rant on her dwindling social media feed, calling me a thief and a backstabber who had stolen the family legacy. This time, however, her words held no power. Several family members reported the post for harassment, and it was quickly removed. Her isolation was nearly complete. Even her former social circle seemed to be keeping their distance. A few weeks after the opening, Derek shuffled into the bookstore, looking awkward and genuinely remorseful. He mumbled an apology for siding with Carol, for believing her lies. "I was an idiot," he admitted. Can we maybe start over?" I looked at him, seeing not the arrogant cousin, but someone else who'd been manipulated by Carol. "Okay, Derek," I said cautiously, "but it'll take time, one step at a time." He nodded gratefully. Inspired by the bookstore and maybe by my fight, my younger cousin Ellie, confusing I know, but she's Uncle Tom's daughter, decided to major in literature when she started college that fall. One afternoon, while sorting through old family boxes Mom had passed along, I found a letter from Grandpa, written shortly before he died. In it, he praised my quiet strength and told me never to let anyone dim my light. I framed it and hung it behind the counter, a reminder of where my real legacy came from. Mom started spending more time at the shop, helping shelve books, chatting with customers. Our bond, fractured for so long, began slowly, carefully healing. We talked more honestly than we ever had before. Carol tried one last desperate guilt trip, texting Nate sob stories and veiled accusations. We calmly blocked her number on both our phones. Rachel successfully finalized the restraining order, getting it extended for a full 2 years. The shield held firm. Life settled into a new, hopeful rhythm. I started a weekly book club at the shop, building a wonderful community of readers and friends. Uncle Tom, who had decided to move closer now that the family dynamics were healthier, became a mentor and a true uncle, hosting relaxed family dinners where laughter flowed freely, conspicuously absent of Carol's tension. The bookstore was even featured in a local magazine, bringing in new customers and filling me with a quiet pride I'd never allowed myself to feel before. I also started therapy, finally unpacking the years of Carol's belittling, learning to fully own my voice and trust my own judgment. Seeing Nate graduate high school, beaming and confident, felt like a monumental victory. We had escaped her shadow together. Mia threw a fantastic party for the bookstore's 1-year anniversary. It was packed wall to wall with supporters, friends, family, loyal customers. Mom gave me a delicate silver necklace that had belonged to Grandma, a tangible peace offering that I started wearing every day. Ellie, the younger one, surprised me by painting a vibrant mural on one of the bookstore walls, a stylized tree with branches representing our rebuilt family. Me, Nate, Mom, Uncle Tom, Mia, even a cautious-looking Derek reaching towards a branch. Occasionally, I'd run into old family friends who had initially sided with Carol or remained silent. More often than not, they'd approach me hesitantly, offering apologies for believing her lies, for not speaking up sooner. I accepted their apologies, letting go of lingering bitterness. Then came the news. Carol's huge mansion on Briarwood Lane was up for sale. She was moving away, downsizing significantly, isolated and increasingly irrelevant in the community she once dominated. Reflecting on the explosive confrontation at the reunion picnic 10 months prior, I realized that standing up, as terrifying as it was, hadn't destroyed my family. It had destroyed the toxic version of my family, clearing the way to build something real, something healthier in its place. It freed me. At a recent family dinner hosted by Uncle Tom, Nate raised his glass. "To courage," he said, looking right at me, his eyes shining, "and to second chances." I hugged him tightly, feeling a sense of wholeness I'd never thought possible. My bookstore, filled with light and stories and the quiet hum of community, wasn't just a business. It was a testament to finding my voice and fighting for myself. Ellie started a book drive for underprivileged kids through the shop, inspired by its community spirit. Mom became the official baker for bookstore events, her cookies legendary. I even started writing again, not just journal entries, but a memoir, tentatively sharing excerpts at my book club, finding strength in vulnerability. Surrounded by Nate, Mom, Mia, Tom, and the supportive community I'd built within the walls of Pages of Courage, I knew, deep in my bones, that I had finally found my true home.